Hi, this is Eric. I'm going to be installing a stealth hitch in my Tesla Model 3. This is a 3,500 pound hitch that can take either a ball or a receiver. The receiver is not rated as high of a rating. The ball is rated at 3,500 pounds and 350 pound tongue weight. The receiver is rated much less than that. But I'm going to give you a quick install video for this stealth hitch. So this part holds the ball and the receiver is here. This receiver is not designed to take a ball adapter. As you can see here, that's upside down, but the receiver is designed to take 300 pounds only, whereas the rest of the hitch is 3,500 pound tow rating with 350 pound tongue weight. Okay, step one is you clamp, on my 2019 anyway, you're supposed to clamp this plastic up with plastic clamps so that it doesn't tear down and damage it. And then step one is to remove these things here, so loosen with a wrench, and then you should just be able to hand loosen them. There's one on each tail light. The next step is to dislodge the velvet-like inner liner here, and to do that you'll probably have to peel back and get access to the thing like that. Some models will have a plastic clip back here you have to remove, but mine does not. So now I can get access to the back here. There you can see the charge port. And do that on both sides. You just need to be able to get access to the wires on the back of the light. So I'll just leave it like that and see where it needs to go from there. So next up is removing the two 8mm nuts holding the tail light on and the wiring harness there. So you need to remove the plug from the tail light and then these two 8mm nuts. One right there and one right there. And presumably they're the same on this side. Yeah, right there, and the wire. Once you have the two nuts off, the tail light's just loose. Before you pull it out, go ahead and take the cable off. To take the cable off, you squeeze right on the edge and just pull it straight back. And so to show you on the cable itself, you squeeze right there. See how that lifts that clip out? So just squeeze that thin part and it'll pull out. And then you pull the tail light straight back. You might need to pry just a little bit here with a plastic pry tool. Just be really careful doing that. What works for me is instead of using the plastic pry tool here, which did not work for me, if you kind of pull up here, snap it out, reach your finger in there and just pull straight back. And see those clips that we don't want to damage are those two plastic clips right there that engage like that. And the same thing on the other side. I just took off those bolts, disconnected the cable, and then lifted and gave it a little tug. Make sure that that plastic piece doesn't go under the trim piece there and crack. Next up is using a 10mm socket to remove the bolts holding the bumper cover on under the tail lights. Once I finally found my 10mm socket, they are easy to remove. As you know, 10mm sockets do not actually exist. Or if they did at some point, they managed to vanish from existence. You'll have to remove 3 of these little rivets The easiest way to get these is to use a trim tool like this, and then you pry it up on the center piece only right there. And once you have that up, you can slip this tool under here and pull it out like that. So that's the easiest way to do that. These are designed to be replaced every use. If you're careful, you can reuse them, but it's ideal to replace these. And you'll see that there's 3 of those down here. There's 1 there, 2 is right there, and 3 is around the back. Let's see if I can get right there. So I need to take all 3 of those out. Next up is to remove the undercarriage bolts. There should be anywhere from 6 to 8 of them depending on the year. One of the things you gotta love with Tesla is they make a lot of variations. So just remove all the bolts on this plastic cover. There's one under here, I think. 2. Oh, I actually have a hitch cover on my 2019 here, so I won't have to cut that. Once I get the panel off, I'll show you the bolt holes in it. A couple notes right here where the rear fascia meets the quarter panel. There is a T25 Torx bit that you have to get. You can just see it there. It's a little out of focus right in the middle there. Also, there's 2 bolts under here on the bumper, holding the bumper to the diffuser. They don't show removing those in the instructions, so I think the 2 will just come off together. There's 2 on each side. Once you have everything loose, you should get some help just so you don't break the sensor wires here, and you need to start prying off. They say to start at the front of the fascia or the bumper cover and work your way back to the center. So like after you take those screws out, I can just pull this out here and pop it back. I'm hearing clips fall. You're probably gonna wanna round those all up when you're done. I think this is where that Torx bolt just went in, but I'll try to keep track of whatever comes out and show where it goes. Most of these are just plastic clips you see, so try not to break those. And over here, we come up here and it looks like the bumper lifts up here. So I should just be able to pry that off. I'm gonna have to break out the tools and try to gently pry up on that. And probably peel this seal off. And give me more to work with. This is just a pressure fit seal. It shouldn't be too bad. I guess there's a little silicone in there. We'll see. Hopefully, I'll probably just try to leave that alone and not replace anything there. That side is released easier now. So now I need to go get my helper before I take this last corner off because I don't want it to drop on the ground. Okay, after freeing both sides, I was easily able to just pull it out. I don't think you have to take that off at all, the seal. But now with your partner holding the bumper cover up, you need to disconnect the clips down here. And it's always a trick figuring out which way they plug. So that one was a squeeze on that light. Let me find the plug here. That one was a squeeze on this light gray one right there. And if we sort of gently pull that away, Okay, that was it. And you notice this thing likes to collect sand, and those 2 bolts that I left there, just leave the skid plate attached. You don't need to take it off. So that's why the instructions had us leave those. Mine had a total of 6 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 on that tab, 5 and 6. I didn't have a bolt in the center. Here's what we have with the cover off. That was 100 times easier than my i3, where I had to like unhook all the little ultrasonic sensors. That just came off as 1 unit, so that was really slick. There's a lot of little vents and stuff here, which I don't know what they do. This must be the vent. It's a 1-way valve. Air can't flow in, but it can flow out. And that must be to vent pressure from the cabin. Next up, there's 5 10mm bolts holding the sensor strip in. I got tired of using the socket, the manual socket, and I got my impact out, and I finally found a 10mm wrench, which took me a while, and removed my 5 bolts. And then this thing just comes out. Those hook in there. There. And kind of gently make sure you free it from the rest. I'll see if I have to do anything with that, but it's free of the bumper now. As a note, I already removed that black trim piece, of course. They recommend marking where it was exactly so that you can return it to the exact spot, and that'll make sure your bumper cover fits fine and stuff. I can probably line it up. I mean, the thing's dirty enough, you can see exactly where those round spots on here were located. See, that's round plastic there. So due to the dirt, I can see exactly where it was. But yeah, you might want to mark where it was. I'll just be sure to not clean those. But you notice it gets kind of gross under here. I'm glad the bumper is aluminum. I hope the steel doesn't rust. I'm in Iowa, so this is like a mixture of salt and dirt. There's even water here at the seams. It's 5 years old and hasn't rusted yet, so that's a good sign. I think they galvanize this, like, you know, most decent cars are galvanized. Next up is to remove the bumper studs. There's either 6 or 8 of them. It says some cars don't have them in this position. Mine obviously does. It says use a deep well socket, but you'll notice that it's not very deep here. I'm able to get this deep of a socket on. This is a 1/2-inch drive. These are 15mm, if I didn't say so before, and it goes completely on with this socket. This is an impact wrench from Milwaukee. I would recommend an impact wrench. You probably don't have to have one, but you'll need a long breaker bar. Repeat the same thing on the other side. Once you have those 4 bolts off, the 3 or 4 bolts on each side, the bumper cover, or the bumper, comes off very easily. It's very light, it only weighs a few pounds. So, because it's all extruded aluminum, it looks like. So, yeah, that should come off pretty easy. Instructions say that reinstalling this beam is optional. If you look at the new Hitch, it's much heavier duty than this beam, so you can see why they would say this is optional. If you want to reinstall it, you do have to take the base plates off, and you can do that with the 3 bolts, nuts on either side here. If there's any factory sealant around here, make sure to clean it up. My car doesn't seem to have any of that. So I just install 8 of these washers around here. They're kind of stuck together, so make sure they don't double up. I say 8 because I have 8 bolts. If you only have 6, do 6. So there, I have those all on. Next up is to just slide the hitch on and attach it and torque to 45 foot-pounds. So mind your orientation, make sure you get the label, it should be upright, and the receiver part pointing down. Make sure you torque using a torque wrench set to 45 foot-pounds. If you don't know how to do that, turn so the 0 lines up perfectly with the 40, and then turn it past until you get to 5, and that means I'm at 45 foot-pounds. See, it's not quite to 50, and it's past 40 a little bit. That's how you know you have it set right. Tighten the end down here, and go ahead and tighten all the nuts until they click. So I get them all close with the impact wrench at its lowest setting. Don't have it at the high setting or you'll over tighten them. So, and then come back with the torque wrench, and there it clicked. And do all 4 of these. I've already done these, but I'm just gonna do them again to make sure. I haven't done that one yet. And there. There. It's a good idea to just occasionally double check to make sure your torque is right. Mine slipped off a little bit. That's where it's important to tighten that bolt at the back. This is kind of a cheap torque wrench, so it's a little difficult. But now I'll just go ahead and do that on the other side. Next up is to install the hitch receiver. And this sucker is really heavy duty. If you're installing it as a tow hitch with the ball, you're gonna need these other 2 plates. Otherwise, you may not use those 2 plates. This thing has bolts that are more than 1/2 inch in diameter there, and just really heavy duty. It weighs more than the bumper does, I think. And this rubber cap comes off. There's a release and a key lock there. So it's a pretty nicely made thing. When you install this, these plates go like this, one on either side, on the outside of the metal brackets, and this handle for the release goes on the right side, the passenger side, I mean. Well, for US models, it's on the passenger side. And the key side goes towards the driver's side. So just as a look, to get this on, you're gonna have to slip that bracket over the handle like that. Now the bracket needs to go on the outside of that metal plate and the hitch goes on the inside, so it'll need to be sandwiched between the 2. So when I have one bolt holding it in place, it looks like that. Now I'll put the other bolt in there. And it holds it nicely like that. And then this other plate also goes on like that. And this side should be easier to get on. It just has to fit over the lock. It's a little friction tight there, but it's clear like that. So I just need to set down the phone and use both hands to put that on. And then we'll tighten the 2 nuts. Make sure you get the locking washer out so it'll go like that. Now, being a hitch, these are non-metric, of course, so they're 15/16. Luckily, I had a 1/2 inch 15/16 socket, and they need to be torqued to a whopping 150 foot-pounds. So you need a torque wrench that goes to 150. Luckily, I lucked out, and my 1/2 inch goes to 150. So that's a lot of torque. You don't want those loosening up and losing a 3,500-pound trailer. That wasn't too bad, but notice that the body interferes with my ability to get my torque wrench on there. On that back bolt, on this bolt, I torqued it just like this to 150. On the back bolt, I had to use two fairly long extensions to bring the wrench all the way out to here to reach back. So it's not as accurate of a torque on that one. I have this one torqued to 150 for sure. So the next thing you do is find the little rubber grommet on the passenger side and pop it off. Mine was painted colored, and you drill a 3/8 inch hole through there. It's rubber, so it doesn't drill very well, but I should be able to push wires through there. And then you come over here, and if you have this wiring harness right here, you unhook it, and you don't plug this in yet, but you take this wiring harness and the 4-way plug wiring harness, and we're gonna feed that in to the hole we made for the grommet. So feed that end of the cable in and the loose end of the black one here into that hole over there. For the wiring, it might be easier to follow the directions in the book. I will just show here. I cut the yellow ring off, as the instructions say, and I strip a little bit of wire and leave it exposed. I twist it just a little bit so I can fit it into the crimp butt connector easier. You'll slide the butt connector on there, and once I have the other wire fed through the grommet and fed into here, the black wire, it's going to come from this connector down here. I'll crimp those together, and you can it's heat shrink tubing there, so you can just heat it and cause it to tighten up a little bit, seal it off from moisture. Whenever you get two connectors connected in any sort of crimp connector, always pull from both sides on it and make sure it doesn't come apart. Pull fairly hard, and if it comes apart, well, you did it wrong. So, and if it does that, you might need a new butt connector, so you might need to have a few extras around if it's a problem. So I would just make sure you crimp it tight enough. Heat that up, and it'll turn into heat shrink tubing on this one. I don't know if the yellow one does, but it doesn't matter too much. This is inside the car, so it's not a huge deal. Okay, what have I done here? I crimped the 4 control wires to the matching 4-way wire that goes over here to the plug. It says to feed it over here and zip tie it. There's not really much room to zip tie it there, so I actually just fed it through here. I don't think it'll hurt anything. And around here and up here, make sure to attach the magnet to the cable. And have about 18 inches of extra, they say. And that just attaches there, and then you're able to reach up from underneath and put it back there. There'll be a hole in the plate that you can reach up through. And then, so that's fed through. I have the 4 light colored wires crimped together. I didn't need to trim those at all. And then this fat white wire from the other side, I had to trim that down and attach a fork connector to it, which I crimped, and then that attaches to that ground bolt in there. All you do is loosen that ground bolt and slide it up underneath. There's already a ground wire there from Tesla, so they're just reusing it, and that makes it so you don't have to take it all the way off, and it's really hard to get back in if you take off, and then whatever that is would lose its ground as well. So, and they don't want you to accidentally have it not get reattached or something. So here's my control module. All those wires are done. The black wire is done, and then now I just need this control wires that control when the brake trailer lights come on. So this module sends the signal out to the brake lights on the trailer and the turn signal lights on the trailer, and then these pick up the signal in the Tesla. So I just need to hook those up now. And then I think everything has to go back together, and that's going to be fun. To finish up the wiring, I routed the yellow wire to this side. I'd accidentally cut it off, so I had to solder it back together. And then use one of these clip connectors. Make sure you squeeze that tight with pliers to attach the purple and yellow wires. And on the other side, I did the same thing over here with the brown and green wires. I attached them to 2 wires up there. Make sure you look in the book, in the instructions. to see which wire to attach to which, because it's very different depending on which vehicle you're using. Like in my 2019, I did not need to use the red wire at all, but in some 2023 and 24 vehicles, you have to use it. And then, so I just had to do the first 3. When I tested with my multimeter, I made sure that the left blinker caused the voltage to jump up and down, and the right blinker caused the voltage to jump up and down, and the brake lights show as like something like 14 volts on both the left and the right blinkers simultaneously. If you turn the brake light and the blinker on, it switches between, it just turns on and off at a high voltage instead of on and off at a low voltage. Otherwise, I'm just putting everything back together once I got all the wires up. I haven't tucked everything in yet. I'm gonna tuck that in and make it look nice. But I just wanted to get the bumper cover on because I needed help to do that, and my help was going to bed, so I have that started. Before I put the bumper cover back on, remember to reinstall all these little clips that probably came off. There's 2 of them, one on either side. You need these to put the hex screws in. If you don't get this back on there, you're not going to be able to put the hex screw back in. So do that on both sides. As a temporary measure, I put these bolts just in very loosely so it doesn't fall off and rip my cables out. To put the bumper cover back on, there's little snaps on top of that black sensor bar, the plastic sensor bar that we took off that they wanted us to mark. I don't think marking was necessary on this model year because it went right back into the same position. But I wanted to point that out because when you start putting this thing back on, watch that silicone, it's really sticky. When you put this thing back on, it should start here. I had to push down on it and push it in to make sure, and pull out on it a little bit first. So I pulled out, pushed down, and pushed it in until those little, if you take this seal off, you can see the little clips on the top, and until those locked into place. And then once those locked into place, I went around the sides and pushed them in, kind of pushing in and giving it a hit like that. As I went around, before hitting it, I made 100% sure the clips were lined up. Otherwise you could break it. So now I'm gonna go do that to the other side. So make sure the clips are lined up here. And then just give it a little whack. Like that. And then kind of the same thing here. We just need to make sure that this is above the clips. And just whack it like that. And you notice I'm giving it a pretty good hit. If you want to be more careful than me, so you don't dent the car like I probably just did there, you know, be a little more gentle. But it does take quite a bit of force. You know, make sure you use something soft, maybe put a rag there to take some of the blow. Now, I need to go put all the screws back, same way as I put them together. I'll tighten those 2. I'll put the little Torx bolts on either side in the fender, put all the undercarriage bolts on, and then put the 3 little plastic pegs. I'll probably have to use some new ones, a couple of them broke, to hold the fender liner in place. And then just tuck the wiring up, clean up my mess, put the taillights back in, and they'll be done. One note when you're putting the aero shield thing on, make sure you tuck the front in up underneath like that. If it's hanging down, you can't put the bolts in up front. I was able to do that by bending it and flicking it up underneath. I didn't have to take the whole bumper cover off to do that, as long as all the bolts are out. So it's pretty flexible still. Once you have the hitch all installed, I can show you up under here. There is a key thing right here to use. You can just, once the hitch is inserted, I'll be able to push that in and lock it, but the hitch isn't inserted yet. The hitch inserts right there, and there is the handle to unlock it. So to unlock it, you just rotate the handle until it clicks, and then it locks into position, and then the hitch will pull down. And to unlock it, you first have to make sure that this lock cylinder is in the extended position. Then to put the hitch in, you just come in here like this and just give it a good push until it clicks. And you can see that it's flush up there. And now I can push that lock in there. The lock cylinder clicks in. And now you'll notice that if I rotate the handle, I can't rotate the handle because it's locked. So make sure to restore the rubber cover over the lock cylinder, like that. And just to give you a quick demo, if I pull that cover off, I can use the key, which is pretty easy to get in. I say that, no it's not. There, push it in, and then you just push in and rotate it horizontally. And then you rotate it back vertically and pull it out. See how that lock cylinder is extended now? Come over here, rotate the handle up, and the hitch will fall out. I'm trying to do it without dropping my phone or the hitch. On that, I have to use 2 hands. Like that. You have to wiggle the hitch a little bit to make it come free because it's fairly tight in there. They don't want any movement. So with that, I am all done. I put the locking cover back up, locked it, and here I now have a hitch. So I hope you enjoyed that video. I'll have more once I actually have a trailer and I'm pulling with it. So thanks for watching.